The last Saturn-Uranus square of this series is on December 23rd, 2021, and today we are talking about how that might affect monetary policy and Bitcoin, and so you want to stay tuned. Hi, I'm Donna Stellhorn, your practical astrologer, here to talk to you today about the Saturn-Uranus square. And this is a continuation of a video that I did months ago. In the previous video, I talked about how the Saturn-Uranus square could be used by you in general. And now I want to talk about it in terms of finance specifically, and very specifically about Bitcoin. Now, if you want, well, we're going to talk about some of the history, and so if you want to skip all the history, then there's going to be chapters, and so you can jump to the big reveal at the end. But I hope you will stay tuned so that you can see where my thinking is going with this. Now, I'm not a financial planner, and I am not prescribing or suggesting that you take any action based on this video. This video is just for your information. So I have been an astrologer for a long time, and so I know my stuff when it comes to astrology, but again, check with your financial professional before you make your financial decisions. Now, if you are interested in looking specifically at your chart, please contact me. I do readings, and I am planning some classes coming up in 2022. And just to let you know, I'm doing tropical astrology and Western astrology. So tropical Western astrology. So we first saw the planet Uranus on March 13th, 1781. And of course, I'm saying we being astrologers / astronomers. I actually wasn't there. I'm not quite that old. But Uranus has come to be representing technology as well as, all the basics from electricity all the way to technology, which is so interesting because at the same time, during the 1700s, is when people really started to study electricity itself. So then when we see the planet Uranus, which is, this technology idea with also its ability to create massive change, when it comes around to make a square to Saturn, or when Saturn comes around to make a square to it, because Saturn moves more quickly, then we see that the structure, which is Saturn, is disrupted by Uranus. And because the planets move at a regular rate, we can see the different intervals of when this happened. So in 1885, Saturn in Gemini was making a square to Uranus in Virgo, and during this time we had a historical expansion of the stock market that lasted until the 1930s. And during this time, many companies joined the stock exchange because back in 1885, there was maybe 250 different stocks in the entire U.S. stock exchange, and 81% of those were railroad stocks. So it was a very limited exchange, and then it grew and grew and grew. Then in 1909 and 1910, Saturn in Aries made a square to Uranus in Capricorn, and the North Node was at 29 Taurus, which it's about to be again, so that's why I bring that up. There was a stock market crash. The stock market dropped 26%, which is very high. It did that over a course of a year, and over that year, or about 12 months, there was a recession. Then, most notably, in 1930 and 1931, Saturn in Capricorn made a square to Uranus in Aries. And of course, this was just after the 1929 crash of the stock market, and this ushered in the Great Depression. In 1951 and 1952, Saturn in Libra made a square to Uranus in Cancer. And this was an interesting period because it was less about the stock market and more about monetary policy. So in 1951, the U.S. Treasury and the Federal Reserve reached an agreement that they were going to separate their two departments. And so this laid the foundation for the modern Federal Reserve as we know it today. This was actually called the liberation of monetary policy. So now during this time, there was very little activity in the stock market itself, because from 1929 to 1956, most people stayed out of the stock market because, there was the Great Depression and then World War II. And so there was a lot of reasons not to be in the stock market and not a lot of money to put into it. But interestingly enough, that it took from 1929 to 1956 for the stock market to crest or go higher than it was in 1929. That's how long the stock market stayed low. Now things get even more interesting. So in 1975 and 1976, Saturn in Leo made a square with Uranus in Scorpio. Now, of course, you probably know that in 1971, Nixon signed the Smithsonian Agreement, taking us off the gold standard. But that actually was a gradual process. So that didn't finish up until 1976, when at that point, the U.S. government took all the legal references of gold connected to the dollar out of the legal system. And so at that point in 1976, the dollar became an official fiat currency. Now, then, in 1999 and 2000, Saturn and Taurus made a square to Uranus in Aquarius. Of course, this brought us the dot-com crash. And so during this time, the Feds raised interest rates to curb market enthusiasm, and internet stocks did not respond well. And so most internet stocks dropped 75% in value. Now we fast forward to 2021, where Saturn in Aquarius makes a square to Uranus in Taurus. Now, it's already squared twice. It has one more to do in December. And of course, we have all experienced this. COVID has really turned the economy on its head. So many businesses have changed or, just closed entirely. And we have cryptocurrencies now at a new high. So in 2020, Bitcoin started the year at $7,000 per coin. And as I am recording this video, it's actually at around 57, I think. It crested in the 60,000 range, and then it dropped a little bit based probably on that lunar eclipse we just had. And it'll be interesting to see what it does going forward this year. But it does look like, it's not going to drop so much. I mean, it's not going away. Now, in 2022, there's a no partile square between Saturn and Uranus in September and October. Now, no partile means that they get close, but they don't hit exactly. And usually in this type of square, there's more the feeling that something's going to happen, and it doesn't really. It's kind of like a close call. Or it may be a time where you look back on something and say, what did I learn? And, do I have to short my position? So there may be a lot of talks of, things like crashes or, that Bitcoin isn't real or all of these things in September and October of 2022, but whatever it is doesn't necessarily manifest. So then the next square of Saturn and Uranus will be in 2043. Saturn in Scorpio will square Uranus in Leo. Now, if you know something about Bitcoin, and I'm not talking about all the other cryptocurrencies, just Bitcoin itself, Bitcoin has a limit, a mining limit of 21 million coins, and it is scheduled to finish the mining in 2040. So that means that something is shifting in 2043 about monetary policy in general. So we have two things this could be. One, it could be that at that point, either Bitcoin has already been adopted as the reserve currency, and this is something that everybody uses and everybody's familiar with, or that there is something that causes the consensus, the people who are the miners of Bitcoin, to say, why stop at 21 million coins? Why don't we, just make more money? Which, of course, is the reason that we're, in our modern day, in an inflationary period, because the Fed has been printing dollars. And so the fact that there is a finite number of coins that are scheduled to be for Bitcoin is the reason that, or one of the reasons that it could be considered a very solid currency. But if this somehow gets shaken up, then that's the problem. Of course, because Bitcoin is a decentralized system, it is really unlikely, at least that's what they say, that there would be a consensus to raise the number of coins that could be mined. So, and I don't know the programming side of this, so maybe it is technically impossible, but I can't think that there's anything that's technically impossible these days. And so, good grief, what could it be like in 20 years? So I think what this really means, though, is that we are going to either see Bitcoin become this very stabilized platform for, how money is exchanged, and that can happen in 2040, and yet over the next 3 years after that, we would watch very carefully to see what changes in the policy itself. Is that the time where the entire world officially accepts it? Or is that the time in the world where they do something that destabilizes it and therefore destabilizes all currencies? So what you do in the meantime, of course, is your own research. I really encourage you to look into the reasons behind Bitcoin, what's the science behind it, what is, how is it made and mined, and, just like looking at its basis, its first principles, as they call it, then you can make a really good decision yourself. So, but what we do see is from the Saturn-Uranus squares, we have had changes in monetary policy every few years, and we are in one right now, and the next one will be in 2043. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you're interested in getting a reading, please let me know. There's information in the description. And stay tuned because LaRue wants to say hi.